Hello and welcome to Daily News Capsule. Let's try to go through the important pieces of news that have appeared in the Hindu newspaper of today. So the first news that is coming your way is the renaming of Lansdowne Cantonment. Lansdowne is a tehsil in the Pauri Garhwal district in the state of Uttarakhand. Now it is an important cantonment named after the then Viceroy Lord Henry Lansdowne, and this renaming was done in the year 1890. Prior to the year 1890, the area was known as Kaludanda. Now, the Cantonment Board has made a recommendation, had passed a resolution to rename the cantonment and now to call it as Jaswantgarh. So, Lansdowne Cantonment will be renamed as Jaswantgarh, as in this regard the required resolution has been passed by the Lansdowne Cantonment Board. So this news becomes important for the students, the candidates who are appearing for state service examinations, specifically Uttarakhand Public Service Examinations and the Uttarakhand Short Staff Selection Commission examinations, UKSSC examinations. The next article that is coming your way is written by PDT Acharya, who was the former Secretary General of Lok Sabha. Now this is related to the political upheaval that is going on in the state of Tamil Nadu, where the governor Shri R.N. Ravi has dismissed a sitting minister V. Senthil Balaji on the charges of corruption. As you must have gone through the news in this regard, that Enforcement Directorate has registered a case against the said minister, and on these grounds the Tamil Nadu governor Shri R.N. Ravi has dismissed V. Senthil Balaji. Now PDT Acharya is of the view that this move by the governor will create a very dangerous precedent. It has created a very dangerous position. Now to make his point clear, he draws a parallel, or he draws a distinction, to be more precise, between the provisions of the Indian Constitution, specifically with respect to the powers of the governor, with respect to the appointment of ministers, and the provisions that had come into picture prior to independence through the Government of India Act 1935. So Shri PDT Acharya says that under our constitution, in our constitution, Article 164 of the constitution says that Chief Minister is appointed by the governor without any advice from anyone. However, the appointee, the Chief Minister so appointed, will advise the governor that who would be the other ministers. So in a nutshell, the idea that has been placed in the constitution is that it is the Chief Minister who decides that who would be the part and parcel of his or her council of ministers. Indirectly, it could be said that it is the Chief Minister who would be deciding that who will not remain the part and parcel of the council of ministers. Now, according to the provisions of the Government of India Act 1935, PDT Acharya quotes section 51(1) of the Act, where it says, "The governor's minister shall be chosen and summoned by him, shall be sworn as members of the council, and shall hold office during his pleasure." Now this section makes it clear that ministers shall be chosen by the governor, meaning thereby the ministers hold office during his pleasure. Further, subsection 5 of section 51 says that the functions of governor under this section with respect to the choosing and summoning and dismissal of ministers and with respect to the determination of their salaries shall be exercised by him in his discretion, meaning thereby the salaries, perks, etc. would be decided by the governor, and he would be exercising his sole discretion. Now PDT Acharya says that two things become clear from section 51(1) and section 51(5) of the Government of India Act 1935. The first thing is that the ministers are chosen by the governor, and second, that they are dismissed by him at his discretion. Thus, governor during the colonial rule, during the British rule, had absolute discretion to choose a minister and to dismiss him. But after independence, our constitution came into picture, became operational from 26 January 1950, and the position in this regard has changed. Now this changed position has been clarified by the judiciary. So these points have been highlighted. These points are important. The judicial clarification is that the position of governor in Indian constitutional setup has been clarified by the Supreme Court in a number of cases. In Shamsher Singh and others versus State of Punjab, this is a 1974 case, a 7-judge constitution bench declared that the law on the powers of governor in the republic in the following words. Now these are the words that have been mentioned in the judgment of the court, judgment of the Supreme Court. We declare the law of this branch of our constitution to be that the president and governor, custodians of all executive and other powers under various articles, shall, by virtue of these powers, exercise their formal constitutional powers only upon and in accordance with the advice of the ministers, save in a few well-known exceptional situations. Similarly, in Nabam Rabia versus Deputy Speaker, a constitution bench of 5 judges reaffirmed the law of the land and laid down that has been laid down in Shamsher Singh, and further held that the discretionary powers of governor are limited to the postulates of Article 163(1). The court also set aside the decisions in Mahavir Prasad Sharma and Pratap Singh Raoji Rao Rane cases, where it was held that the governor can exercise power under Article 164 in an unfettered manner. So, according to PDT Acharya, the actions that have been taken by the Honorable Governor of Tamil Nadu, Shri R. N. Ravi, is not good in law, and therefore it could set a dangerous precedent. And why he is saying so? Because the sitting chief minister, Shri M.K. Stalin, has never made any recommendation for the dismissal of V. Senthil Balaji from his Council of Ministers. So PDT Acharya is of the view that this decision of dismissing V. Senthil Balaji from the Council of Ministers is a unilateral decision, and it is bad in law. Coming to the next news. The next news is related to India-Africa relations. Now this has been written by Shri Rajiv Bhatia, who is a distinguished fellow and a Gateway House and a former High Commissioner to Kenya, Lesotho and South Africa. Now according to his analysis, the India-Africa relations are growing at a sound pace, and he is of the view that the 20-member Africa expert group that has been created by Vivekananda International Foundation. Vivekananda International Foundation is a think tank, is an NGO, and the Vivekananda International Foundation has come out with a report, VIF report, Vivekananda International Foundation report. The name of the report is India-Africa Partnership: Achievements, Challenges and Roadmap 2023. Now the author, Shri Rajiv Bhatia, has chaired the Africa expert group established by Vivekananda International Foundation. Now, a host of recommendations have been made in this report, and a gist of recommendations have been provided by Shri Rajiv Bhatia in this article. Now, what are the gist of recommendations? Now, let's see. The central part is the Roadmap 2030. A set of nearly 60 policy recommendations that are designed to deepen and diversify the India-Africa partnership. They cover 4 areas. First, political and diplomatic cooperation should be strengthened by restoring periodic leaders summit through the medium of India-Africa Forum Summit. The last summit in this regard had happened in the year 2015. Besides, a new annual strategic dialogue between the chairpersons of African Union and India's External Affairs Minister should be launched in 2023. Another recommendation relates to foregoing consensus among G20 members on African Union's entry into G20 as a full member. Apart from this, the expert group has also suggested that the Ministry of External Affairs should have a secretary exclusively in charge of African affairs to further enhance the implementation and impact of the Africa policy. Another recommendation, the second recommendation, is with respect to defense and security cooperation, where the report says that the government needs to increase the number of defense attaches deployed in Africa, expand dialogue on defense issues, widen the footprint of maritime collaboration, and expand lines of credit to facilitate defense exports. More can be done to increase the number of defense training slots and enhance cooperation in counterterrorism, cybersecurity, and emerging technologies. The next recommendation, the third recommendation, is that the largest number of, and these are the largest number of recommendations, these are related to economic development. Now, India-Africa trade is as of now touching at $98 billion in fiscal year 22-23. Now, this figure, according to this Africa expert group, is that it can still go up. And how it can go up? It is giving a recommendation in this regard. It can be done through the creation of an Africa growth fund. Now, a special package of measures to improve project exports and build up cooperation in the shipping domain has been suggested. A special focus on promoting trilateral cooperation and deepening science and technology cooperation could play rich dividends, as per the reporting of Africa Expert Group. Another recommendation, the fourth one, is with respect to socio-cultural cooperation, where it says that socio-cultural cooperation should be increased through greater interaction between universities, think tanks, civil society, and media organizations in India and select African countries. Setting up a national center for African studies will be in the right step, as per the recommendations of the author of the article. Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation and Indian Council for Cultural Relations scholarships awarded to Africans should be named after famous African figures, meaning thereby taking into account the contribution of personalities, statesmen, politicians in Africa. They should be recognized by naming the scholarships that are offered by Indian Technical and Economic Cooperation and Indian Council for Cultural Relations. They should be naming their scholarships against in the name of those personalities. Likewise, visa measures for African students who come to India for higher education should be liberalized. They should also be given work visas for short periods. And finally, the report suggests a special mechanism for implementation of Roadmap 2030. Now, this can best be secured, according to Shri Rajiv Bhatia-led Africa Expert Group. This could best be secured through close cooperation between MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, and the National Security Council Secretariat through a team of officials working under the joint leadership of Secretary Africa in the MEA, Ministry of External Affairs, and a designated Deputy National Security Advisor. So these are forward-looking recommendations, and the government should take into account that these recommendations will further improve Africa-India relations and take it into new heights. Coming to the next news, and this is related to dark patterns advertisements which appear in the online domain, in the virtual web. Now, Center is trying to issue, norms to tackle this pattern, this new trend of advertising in the online domain. Now, the government is very much concerned. The Ministry of Consumer Affairs has taken note of it and concerned over the increasing dark patterns of misleading advertisements, creating false urgency, confirm shaming, forced action, subscription traps, and nagging on online platforms. These negative tactics that are employed by corporates who are selling their products on the online world, the government, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, have taken note of it, and they are trying to come up with norms related to it. Now, what are dark patterns? Now, dark patterns, as the point highlighted says, the dark pattern distort consumer autonomy using a design architecture that tricks or influences consumers to make choices not in their best interest. Now, what are these kind of behaviors? These kind of behaviors is that when a e-commerce portal, for example, e-commerce website, tries to add products to your shopping cart without your consent. Now, that is again a classic example of what is called as dark pattern advertising. Now, all major online platforms have been written a letter from the Ministry of Consumer Affairs. Consumer Affairs Ministry has issued letters to all major online platforms advising them not to engage in unfair trade practice by incorporating dark patterns in their online interface to manipulate consumer choice and violate consumer rights as they are mentioned, as they are enshrined under Section 2, subsection 9 of Consumer Protection Act. Tactics such as false urgency, which creates a sense of scarcity to pressure consumers into making a purchase or taking an action, and basket sneaking, the technique to add additional product or services to the shopping cart without user consent, are used widely to lure customers. Subscription traps, the tactic that makes it easy for consumers to sign up for a service but difficult for them to cancel it, and hiding additional costs, particularly by travel and tourism websites, have also come under Ministry's radar. So this is an important piece of information with respect to consumer rights, fundamental rights, and the right to make correct choices. So coming on to the next news, essentially it is not a news, it is an advertisement that had appeared in the newspaper, Hindu newspaper, and this is related to BIRAC, Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. Now, please take a note of the fact that in this year's India Yearbook, information regarding BIRAC has also been incorporated. So it becomes, this goes without saying that this organization becomes important, and questions could be asked by picking up these statements itself. Now, for example, the question could be that consider the following statements, and the statement could be, the first statement could be that BIRAC is a Government of India enterprise. Statement 2 could be that BIRAC is operationalizing EUA centers for innovation and translational research. Now, the question would be asking the candidate that out of these two statements, which are correct or which are incorrect. So my point is that a piece of information which may appear to be an advertisement in the newspaper essentially also could be translated into a question. So this is the piece of information coming your way by Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. Now, this is a Government of India enterprise, and it is establishing EUA centers, and under which scheme it is doing that? Empowering youth for undertaking value-added innovative translation research, that is EUA. The full form of EUA is Youth for Undertaking Value-Added Innovation Translation Research Scheme. Now, this is the scheme under which these EUA centers are being created. Now, where will these EUA centers be housed, or where they would be located? They would be located within universities and institutes. And what would they be doing? They would be focusing on the inculcation of biotech entrepreneurial culture through pre-incubation, funding, and monitoring support. Now, who would be eligible to apply? Now, there would be recognized universities and institutions from tier 2 and tier 3 cities. So these were the pieces of information, pieces of news that are worthy of being taken note of, and that would be helpful to the candidates in their preparation for the various competitive examinations. With this, I'll take your leave. Thank you very much.